Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's live show where we are designing a campaign for Arka Valos, the tin mold, as that translates, I believe, in Finnish, I stand to be corrected. Anyway, so yes, it's not a tin mold at all. That was just a random collection of words that I put together that just happened to mean something in another language. Anyway, I am so glad to be here with you this evening and for us to spend the next hour designing this campaign space that anyone can play in. It is freely available on World Anvil, and I should have copied that link down or so I can share it with you, but I'm hoping someone can share the link in the chat for the World Anvil link. Timidcast, that's right, Timidcast is what the translation is in Polish. Okay, so I've got chat going. I am streaming both to Twitch and to YouTube. You can see the chat down here as it's busy scrolling up, so I'm trying to juggle that. It is Wednesday, isn't it? Yes, it is, AK Writer. Good to see you here as well. And so Hero Metzler asks a very good question, and I'm very, very evil for not doing it. Who writes the music that plays us in at the beginning of the countdown for this show? That is none other than Darren Curtis from DarrenCurtisMusic.com. Darren Curtis, phenomenal musician. He writes all of the music that I use in all of my live shows. I think he's really talented, really great guy. He has a Patreon. You can go and support him and get music tracks for use in your role-playing games or in your own streams if you have your own streams as well. I am wearing the new hoodie that arrived today. It's part of our collection, a unicorn rising out of a D8. We have got some fun little things there. There it is, extreme size, sharing up that link for us to the World Anvil page. I will share with you what I'm talking about if you haven't watched these streams before. There it is. This is the World Anvil page of Arka Valos. Well, it's not the actual page itself, I should say. Let me show you the actual page. This is the actual page. We've started to put some stuff in here, in particular the rules that we put together, how to construct stuff during foraging and how to actually forage and generate stuff like that. So that is World Anvil that we will be working in tonight in terms of creating our world. So big thank you to World Anvil. I also have Dungeon Fog on standby because I thought I might demonstrate how we can build stuff in our world with regards to the foraging system. I also have another page open that I could show you, and I will show you that just very briefly, and then that was it. So I don't know what that was about. That was just a slip up on my behalf. If you forced me to talk about that, then I would have to talk about that because, well, you saw it here on the stream, even though that was a mistake. And then I have this available to us, which is the basic map that I made with Project Deos. And I'm using this in Photoshop to create the different zones, different regions in there that we might encounter within our role-playing space. So that is where we are at in terms of our world creation. Let me just go to the right window here. I minimize this. Oh yes, and then a good friend of mine sent me, oh god, where is it gone now? I thought I had it open. I thought I saw it. Did I not see it? Here we go. Has sent me this, which is Übersetzte Koppen von Expeditionen Game Board. Totally butchered that German, I'm sure. Übersetzte Copy von Expeditionen. Anyway, he is an Austrian friend of mine, and he sent me this. This is what he designed for his survival game. And he said, well, here, have a look at it. It controls all kinds of things, the weather, rain effects, fields, provisions, etc., etc. He literally sent me this about 10 minutes ago, so I haven't had an opportunity yet to even go through this. It looks super cool, and yeah, some kind of system here. I can't wait to try it out. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to use. Anyway, it's something that we could definitely look at in terms of adding to our world. What I am showing you, in case this feels like just a barrage of stuff, right, is when I go about creating a campaign. The bottom line is assembling what you are going to need to best prepare you to run that game. And I've recently released a YouTube video where I said, we don't need to plan. We kind of do, but we don't. We do, but we don't. We need to plan stuff that we might need. We don't need to plan stuff that we think we're going to need. Because generally speaking, it's never going to happen, right? The players are going to go off and do their own thing, and they're going to have fun, and they're going to explore your world, and you're going to be unprepared for where they're going. So you can't prepare for where they're going, but what you can do is you can prepare yourself for creating a space in which you can, on the fly, create stuff for your players. And that, I think, is the absolute key essence that I've been talking about unknowingly, really, for years, is that you can't prepare. You can railroad, which we don't really want to do, and which I think it is fun. It's definitely fun, and I think we do need to use that as a tool, but it's one of many in our toolboxes. The most important thing, though, is giving ourselves a space in which we can just come up with stuff on the fly as we need to, and we have at our fingertips what we need in order to do that. So what did we need for this campaign? We needed to figure out how the PCs were going to survive in this world, because the entire idea is that they get dumped here through these portals that float in the air. They get dumped onto the planet, and then they have to survive. Now, we don't yet have a campaign. We have a setting in which a campaign could take place. Okay? So we have got the tools now that we needed. If we needed to run this game tonight, we have a basic map. We have some regions that are controlled by different tribes. We haven't identified or worked out what those tribes are yet. We don't need to just yet, okay? Just yet. We will tonight, but we don't need to at the moment. We have worked out the rules for survival. We have worked out the map for survival. So we could start playing right now. Now, I have, as a back knowledge, let's say we're using 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, I know that rule system, and we have access to all of the monsters that are in that rule book. We don't have custom monsters. We haven't made them fit our setting at all. We haven't looked at unique races or unique classes that might work better for this world environment. That is something that we could do to help us in terms of running our game, but we are still missing the fundamental campaign. So I started by saying that we shouldn't plan for everything, but now I'm saying that we need to have a campaign, which sounds like a plan. Well, let's just look at what I mean by a plan. So if I look at our world, and this is often what I will do, by the way, folks, is that I will look at the map and go, okay, so this is a low resolution version of the actual Deus map, right? And next week, there's a new patch coming out for this software, by the way. If you're keen to know more, join me on Tuesday night at the same time as this stream, as a matter of fact, where I take you through the latest updates on that. And that's on the Dungeon Fog YouTube channel or the Dungeon Fog Twitch channel. Anyway, there's some new updates for the software. We have got a map here, and we've said, okay, well, we want the players to land somewhere where they can get some basic information, but are not overwhelmed. We want to let them explore and think that they're alone until they discover someone else. Why? Why am I saying that? Part of what I have always maintained is when you are looking at your setting, when you're looking at your idea, the bottom line is you have to also look at the expectations. Now, if you think about almost any survival game or survival movie or people dumped on a foreign place and have to survive, inevitably, it is always about, firstly, overcoming the natural environment and the predations of the local environment. Okay, we should book that and place that somewhere important. Then it's about discovering the others, the other forces, the other groups, the other nations that are out there that are now going to give you a hard time because you have now mastered your domain. Almost always true. Whenever we have this sort of first contact thing with someone who's on their own, they start on their own and then they expand out. So we should follow that trope because our players, well, you know, the trope exists because it makes a more interesting story. Okay, so that's pretty much my thinking. Okay, and I'm just trying to help you to plan your own campaign by seeing how I think about it. Now, I should say chat is going really fast tonight. So if I miss your questions, please write the word question in caps and then actually ask your question after that. So then, yes, let's see. So I'm just looking at chat very quickly. What software is this? So the software that I use to make this map is called Deos, and that's from dungeonfog.com. And then I brought it into Photoshop so that I could do the overlays, very rough overlays. So you can see I can turn them on and off. I brought it into Photoshop so I can do the overlays, and then texting if I needed to label texts and stuff. We might get there, we might not get there. So there you are. And Landon, thank you for pointing out, put the word question in front of it so that I can see that. And Extreme Size sharing all the links tonight. Thank you for that. I will just retweet that out to everybody. Ravenica, thank you for your very kind words. I really do appreciate that. So that is absolutely awesome. And it's nice to see so many of you here. Absolutely awesome. Okay, so in order for us to have a campaign, in order for us to have a cohesive idea, we need a starting point. We need to decide on our actual campaign. Is it going to be episodic? In other words, are we going to just run each adventure on its own within the world of Arka Valos? So it doesn't matter. We don't have a big bad. This week's adventure might be fending off savage predators that are in the territory, and the PCs have to survive against these savage predators that have got giant tentacles and whatever. Next week it's or 3 weeks later, because adventure might take 3 or 4 weeks to play through, the next adventure is the PCs notice someone sending them a signal from the top of a mountain, and they have to climb to the top of the mountain. And then the following week, the next adventure is they have to cross the river because the river's flooding and their territory is going to get destroyed. Something like that. So it's episodic. It has nothing to do with anything else. So that's the one type of campaign that we could design here. And this type of campaign, the survival campaign, lends itself to that perfectly, by the way. It really does. So we could do that. Lots of questions come through. I'm going to answer those very quickly before we talk about the rest of the campaign types. Third Floor Wars says, how do you feel about low prep systems like Forbidden Lands driven by random tables? I like random tables in terms of them giving me on-the-fly inspiration. I don't like random tables in terms of determining the outcome of situations. So that's all I will say on that. I haven't played Forbidden Lands. I really want to, as a matter of fact. It does crop up quite often in terms of people talking about systems. Forbidden Lands does come up quite a lot. So that's really cool. But yes, random tables, I kind of feel like that's fine, but then your players should roll up random characters as well. If you see the analogy I'm drawing there, I like the GM to have chosen, use your random table to inspire you, but don't be ruled by it. Hiro Metzler asked another question. When that screen popped up, was it really a mistake or is something afoot? Oh, that's a very good question. Midnight Rider asks, I one time tried to GM, but my players strayed from my campaign idea. Are you supposed to wing it from there? Ah, Midnight Rider, you are watching the perfect stream tonight. This is exactly what I'm going to be talking about tonight. So hang in there. Okay. We will get to that as a very long question. Eric van Roxalot says, prologue sessions where PCs get arrested or their army loses a battle and they become POWs or refugees. We're going to talk about that prologue because it's an important one, especially for this type of campaign. So yes, I agree with you. We're going to talk about prologue. Remind me about that one. Top Channel says, hi Guy, how to engage players in our history. We will cover that in tonight's session, so hang in there. Christian Taylor asks, have you heard of the Lancer TTRPG? I may have, but it hasn't stuck in my head. It sounds familiar, but that I could be mixing up with Freelancer, that computer game that came out that I never played because I was waiting for my computer to be enough to run it. Anyway, that's fine. Okay, cool. So back to the types of campaigns we could do. So we could do episodic, right? Which absolutely fine. If we're doing episodic, and this goes to Midnight Rider's questions about them straying from the campaign, an episodic campaign doesn't have a big, long thing. There's nothing for them to stray against. You're doing an adventure at a time, and the adventures don't link together from the GM's perspective. You haven't got a big grand scheme. Your players will be creating a grand campaign. It will feel like this grand campaign where they arrived on this planet and they survived and they built a fort and then they got attacked and then they did this and then they did that and they built an empire and they were raised up as gods by the natives or whatever. That's all going to emerge from them going through each adventure. You don't have to worry about the bigger picture. There is no bigger picture. From a campaign perspective, you will be still running around the rest of the world, making sure other things are happening to make that world feel alive, but there is nothing for them to vary from. Okay? So that's point number one. We could do an epic campaign, which is where we have our grand plan. We have our master sentence, and we have a big picture that the PCs are actually going to unite this fractured land together. Or the PCs are going to figure out a way to get through those portals and get back home so they can go and try and overcome their issue. Now, someone was suggesting that we do a prologue. Arka was suggesting this, that we do a session 0 could be where the players are being arrested for their acts. It could be that they are being tried unfairly. It could be that they are quite literally being persecuted, or that they're volunteering to go through. That's entirely up to us. How do we want to run that? But it does give us a very strong beginning for an epic campaign. If they are standing there and the evil vizier is going, so long, Prince Ali. Goodbye to you. I have thwarted you, and off you go. It's a hard sell for me to believe that some kind of giant vizier would be targeting out level 1 characters, assuming we're starting them at level 1. So maybe the prologue session could be them at level 1, getting up to level 2 or 3, and then they get kicked to Arka Valos. The trick is that you have to make sure that they don't fall in love with the world that they're already in, because if you are then sending them to Arka Valos for the rest of the game, they don't go, I want to go back there. It was a more interesting world, right? We got to be careful about that. So a classic example of that, by the way, is Terra Nova. The TV series, it had one season. It was a Steven Spielberg produced show about a bunch of people who went back in time to the dinosaur period, basically. Cool idea, but the world that they were leaving behind was this grim, dark future thing with a whole bunch of politics going on, which was equally as interesting. It's like, well, maybe you shouldn't have left. Anyway, so that's a whole different story. All right, so epic campaign, we'd need a sentence, and then we'll start to flesh it out from there. An accidental campaign could be that we do this as a one-shot. We've only spent, if you look at it, we have only spent 3 hours yakking about all kinds of stuff, plus this world. I spent maybe 3 hours creating the random tables and the map. Maybe. It could just be a one-shot where they go in and they do stuff. If the players like it, they can do another thing. And then it's moved from being an accidental campaign, it suddenly becomes an episodic campaign. And then later on, you can develop a big bad, which then makes it an epic campaign. So this is why I'm saying you don't have to start off with a giant plan. See where it goes. Judge your players. I see there was a question there. What do you do about people who are bored with your game? Well, maybe you're trying to run a too big a game and you need to bring it much smaller, much closer to home and make it more intimate. Get those players involved by making it more personal. By not having your grand plans, which they don't care about. Why should they care about it? They don't know what your plans are. They're just trying to survive the first day on this new planet. So epic campaigns, I love the idea of epic campaigns. I really do. And I usually end up running epic campaigns. But very seldom nowadays will I try and plan out a whole campaign in its entirety. So there is that. Okay. Vern asks a question. I love the channel. Thank you, Vern. Should there be combat in every session? That's entirely between you and your players. Now, I run a group every Sunday. We play for 3 hours. They're a great group. I get nervous when we've had 3 sessions with 0 combat. And then I say to them, it's like, guys, you haven't had any combat. They're like, that doesn't matter. We have had this, we've done that, we've negotiated this, we've negotiated that, we've been involved in this, we've done this, we've done this, we've done that. They avoid combat by outthinking their opponents, which is fantastic. So that works really well. But then sometimes they go, you know, we haven't had a combat in a while. I think it could be quite fun to have a combat. And I'll go, oh boy, okay. Ironically, I will then try and set up a combat, and then they either avoid it or they walk around it. 2 sessions ago, the combat, their guide was a badger who was supposed to lead them to a missing druid. Only they asked the badger why he wanted to contact the druid, and he told them he was looking for a mate, so they found the badger a mate instead. So instead of going to the druid who was surrounded by undead warriors and a vampire and all kinds of cool and wonderful things, they helped a badger find a mate and then carried on their way, because then the badger didn't need the druid anymore. And they didn't kind of go, well, the badger was looking for the druid and the badger said the druid had gone missing. You know, but that was partly me not making it clear enough that the druid had gone missing, but also the players having a great time. I mean, how is it possible? I have never played a game in 25 years of role-playing where the entire party has actively tried to help one badger get laid. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. Anyway, so there we are. Now, okay, just for those of you that have joined in, so I see Broken Mold Live, for example. I'm not making an example of you. I'm using your question as an example. The question is, I still have not figured out the Armorer Artificer subclass. Is it legit or has it been left out? Is it canon or is it subclass? Those are rules questions. I don't handle rules questions in terms of that kind of question. I'm more about the story and stuff. I say if you like the Armorer Artificer, whatever that might be, include it in your game. Just make sure to let your players know about it. All right? Okay, so I think the point I'm trying to drive is that we need to decide what kind of campaign this is going to be. And I think in terms of making a good example of this system that we have in place, I think, oh, how rude, go away. I think that the best thing that we can do is to create an epic campaign, to create some kind of notion that there is a much bigger picture at play here. And to then work from that, because that will help you to also understand it. I almost advise that if you haven't run campaigns before, if it's the first time that you are going to be GMing, I would almost suggest going with episodic stuff. And the reason why I say that is an excellent example of episodic adventures versus campaign adventures is if you watch Star Trek The Next Generation versus Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And I know I'm quoting 2 TV series that came out nearly 30 years ago, 20 years ago, okay? But there was an example of episodic stuff happening in The Next Generation, and only subtly in the background there was a bigger thread, but not really. It was just here. It was just in and out and in and out and in and out and in and out. Deep Space Nine was when they completely varied from The Next Generation and had this mega long campaign that started from episode 1 and ran all the way through to the final episode 125 sessions later, or at least 125 episodes later. Both had risks. Both are loved for various reasons. So I think Brother Skodidi says, yes, Babylon 5. Babylon 5 was very unique in terms of the time period that it came out. Don't get me started on television series and history in the 90s, because that I used to lecture that. I love that time period in filmmaking and in television. Babylon 5 was very experimental. because of that bigger storyline that Michael J. Straczynski, who was the writer on that, brought to that series. It was the first series that had a single writer throughout the entire thing, and it was truly epic. Now, just because the bait has been taken, the idea, Roman Wolf 007 says, what about Voyager, the best series? Voyager was a very good example of a GM who went, okay, we've got a big storyline, but it's episodic. So the whole idea of Voyager trying to get home was great, but it guided the story to a degree. It created anticipation of potential future conflicts that fans knew about. We knew they were going to have to face the Borg somehow. It was really exciting. We just didn't know how they were going to get there. But each episode in its own right kind of could play out as a mini adventure. You could remove a lot of episodes from Voyager and not really lose the big picture. Whereas with Deep Space Nine, almost every episode was involved somehow in developing this bigger picture. So there is something like that. Babylon 5, I've never watched the entire series from start to finish, I have to say. Naruto, I'm not going to comment. Calidus 1, it's a very interesting thing when you start to bring up anything that comes from Asia in terms of their storyline structures. They have a very different approach. You look at Naruto, you look at Gundam, you look at all of those kind of series. There's a very, very different way. I see Matt Baruco is saying the A-Team was totally episodic. No comment, except the A-Team rocked, absolutely rocked. Yes, it was episodic because that's how we designed TV series in the 80s. There was no other way of doing it. Magnum PI, exactly the same, although Magnum PI had a little epic campaign, Who Really Was Robin Masters, but again, that was hidden, and it wasn't even part of it at all. Okay, so we are doing epic campaigns, right? And that's kind of where we are at. So in order to do an epic campaign, we need to have a sentence. Ravenica, that donation, that's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate that. That's awesome. I will drink heartily from the oat milk, chocolate milk, and say thank you very much for that donation. I really appreciate that. You will have to watch it later. It is going to be available later on YouTube, of course. So there we are. Thank you for that. Also, a huge shout out to Inky Design, who shared up a recipe for banana milk, which I will be making this weekend. I cannot wait for that. So yes, very excited about that. Now, I think also, just while we talk about TV series, before I get too much more sidetracked, not talk about banana milk. When you look at something like, not the A-Team necessarily, but if you look at TV series that are fairly episodic, or you look at modern day comedy series, like at the moment I'm busy watching Brooklyn 99, right? Brooklyn 99, or however they describe it, right? What we tend to get is emergent characters. So the characters themselves don't change fundamentally from how they are created, but because we are exposed to them over so many series, so many episodes, or for an analogy to role-playing, because the player characters are in so many different situations, we start to see a bigger picture around the character. And the character starts to feel more real because we get to learn their phobias, their fears, their hatreds, their loves. We watch as they go on emotional journeys. In other words, that is the campaign, is exploring these characters and having the characters learn about themselves and grow about themselves. So that's the player-centric type of campaign that we could have. So even in the episodic kind of campaign, which is is the GM kind of just giving them fun things to do. The players are going to create a much more interesting narrative with their own characters. So there's lots of things there that we could look at, which I think is very exciting. For tonight, though, we are going to do our epic campaign. But before I do that, there was a question asked, and I did share it, and I'm going to share it with you guys because, well, quite frankly, you turned up for the stream, and I'm just so damned excited about it, I can't not share it. And it will be shared soon by the marketing goblin. But the web goblin sent me something which I looked at and went, okay, this is super cool. Do you think I can find it now? There we go. All right. So I'm going to, and I know we're here to build campaigns, and I'm sorry that I'm deviating. I'm just so damned excited. And I hope you are too. And maybe you're not excited, in which case then we can kill this thing before it becomes public-ish, and then no one will ever have to know. So I am very delighted to show you this. Training Grounds. Level up your game. Now, we've got 2 more episodes. We've got this episode and then next week on the campaign design series, and then that's it from me as a live show. We're just doing that. We did that to celebrate our 200,000 subscribers. Fantastic. Thank you all for being part of that. Then from the 6th of May, we are starting Training Grounds. Now, I can tell you, we were looking for 6 GMs. We have 3 already, okay? And what Training Grounds is going to be, and I really want your honest opinion on this. If this is something that you think is an absolute waste of time, then please help me not waste my time. The most important thing that you do when you are trying to have fun at your table is ask your table what they want. You're my table. So what Training Grounds is all about is that each week, a GM is going to come onto the show, onto the Training Grounds, and they're going to run a module that I have pre-made for them. They're going to run that module. I'm going to be a player, and I'm going to have 4 other players with me. And at the end of that session, it's going to only be an hour and a half long. That's all it is. It's an hour and a half. We will then score that GM on how well they did during the session. Now, I have a scorecard that I made a long time ago, and it's got about 25 categories, I guess, on the different aspects of GMing. We look at things like, did they do well at creating NPCs? Did they create an interesting narrative? Were they fair in their rules adjudication? Were they good at table management? Were they good at engaging all of the players? So it's a very comprehensive scorecard. Now, it is not to find the best GM in the world. That's not what we're interested in. Because that same GM, once they get their score at the end of the show, and it's an average score from all of the players, at the end of the show, they're going to get that scorecard. They come back the next week. They run a new module for new players and me. I'm always in the show. It's something to do with me being selfish and always wanting to be on camera. I don't know. Anyway, I'm always in the show. They run it for a new set of players, and they get another scorecard. The goal of the show is for the GM to improve their scores. And for you watching to be able to see and go, yeah, I kind of see what was being said. They said that the NPCs weren't really well-rounded. So that was in episode 1. And episode 2, the GM's making a big effort to make those NPCs well-rounded. I can see that. That's cool. So the whole idea is about people coming together, playing a game, and for us all to watch and go, yeah, that I see right there. That is a common mistake, or I make that mistake. The other thing that is going to be in that show, of course, is I will be going through each of those categories and explaining what we're going to be looking for and how you can develop yourself if that is an area of weakness. Where did this idea come from? Well, when I used to do competitive role-playing back in my home country of South Africa, we used to get those scorecards. And I remember I would get pretty good scores on the story, on player engagement, on table management, not so much on the rules. But I used to fall down on my NPCs. And it used to drive me mad, absolutely mad. Because I was like, but what's wrong with NPCs? I do all the voices, I don't understand. And then I asked my players, what's wrong with my NPCs? They're like, well, you do great voices, but we can't keep track of who's who and who's who and who's who. So then I had to learn, okay, so I need to make each NPC more individual. Okay, cool. So that's what I started to do. And then those that scoring used to go up, and then that was it. So, okay. Now, how do we select contestants? How do we do all of that kind of stuff? That is something that you guys will have to watch our social media for. So that's Twitter is at how to GM, Facebook, Discord. That's the big one. I think that's going to be the most obvious one. So we are looking for GMs who will participate. You sign up for 2 weeks at a time. It's all here on the website. The website is not yet active, so don't try and go there. It hasn't yet been released, so you would register as a GM or you would register as a player character. When you register as a GM, you will see here, it'll open up, and then you fill in your details, and then you book your 2 weeks. This is not the right days and things, so don't worry about it. And like I said, we have got GMs already. There are 3 GMs whom I piloted, and they were all very keen. Whether they're still keen or not, I don't know. We will make the scorecard available to everyone. Don't worry, we will definitely show you the scorecard. The Web Goblin is busy working on it at the moment to make sure that it works properly, and that it is actually useful. So I'm glad to see, I think a lot of people say it sounds very interested. The streams will be live, and obviously you will be able to catch them on YouTube thereafter. So yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one. It could be, Zach James, it could be awkward. I feel like they'd just be inside their own heads instead of enjoying the game. You are absolutely right, Zach James. The GM is going to be under phenomenal pressure. There's a camera pointed at them, and like tonight's stream, there's 163 people watching them live, and then potentially thousands of people watching them run a game. So that is incredibly daunting. But if you can do that, and you walk away from it going, I was under huge amounts of pressure, and I managed to get a score out of 5, I managed to get all 3s, that's damned impressive. But you're also walking away going, I got all 3s. That's awesome. I know I need to develop this, or I know I need to develop that, or I know I need to work on this particular point. So yes, it's daunting, but at the same time, I feel like this is the best way to just level up your game. I mean, if you can do it on a live show, you can do it in front of a group of 4 or 5 people in your living room or on Zoom or whatever. So it's a big leap. It's definitely a big leap. But it's all about learning and growing and developing. Okay, right. Enough of that, because there you go. I think it is, and the biggest pressure would be me. I only count as 1/5 of the votes. So there we go. Eric Van Roxalot asks, for Training Grounds, if we sign up as a player, can we later be a GM? Absolutely. There's no rule saying that you can't. Absolutely. And there is no way that you can disappoint me. I see Inky Design saying disappointing me. Absolutely not. The only way that it could possibly happen is if you came on the show and we said, okay, the table's yours, and then you just sat there staring blankly, and I wouldn't be disappointed. I think that's the big thing to bear in mind. I mean, I used to teach TV and radio presenting to students all the time. I've had people stand in front of camera and go blank. So I completely sympathize with the pressure that this lens puts on the person to perform. But anyway, I mean, it's a lot of fun, and that's the bottom line. And so there we are. Are the viewers going to be officially have the ability to give input, says Lance Pickett. We really thought about that. In terms of, do we want to give an open vote to audience members? And quite frankly, the biggest challenge that we have is that with the players that will be joining the game, those players are invested in their characters and they're trying to have a good time. So their perspective is going to be very different from someone who's just watching the show. So someone who's watching the show is going to be a lot more critical of that GM. They might very well be distracted by the players. The players themselves could actually be a hindrance to the GM. If the players are bad players, that GM is going to flounder. If the players are loud and domineering, the GM is going to have to be louder and more domineering and control their table, which if they have a table of great players, they might come across as being a better GM. So by opening it up to voting from the audience, we might do that just out of curiosity. But the Web Goblin might just freak out if we have 1,000 people casting votes at the same time. The intention is not to boost or build anyone's ego here. The intention is to help people to see where they can do better. That's the idea. Okay. All right. Devoted to Mercury, I hear you. It would be great to be able to see what the players scored versus what the audience scored. Let's see. Anyway, that is for another discussion. I will probably do another live show talking about this. So just bear that in mind. I'm going to close this now. So we go back to our original plan. Okay. Which was to create our single sentence. Again, I go back to this map. And the reason why I go back to this map is I love maps. I'm a very visual thinker. I like thinking about these things. If we look at this map from a design perspective or from a campaign perspective, you know, we have this whole long coastline to explore, to stretch out in. And really, when we look at that one sentence, someone wants something badly by a specific time and is having difficulty getting it using a specific thing because of a particular opposition force. There are so many options that we can go with. Do we really want the PCs to escape? Do we want them to make it away from this land? Is that our goal, to let them get back home? If it is, then that prologue that we were speaking about earlier becomes really, really interesting. The prologue sets up our big villain on the outside world, but then we will still need to have a villain here within Arka Valos itself. If it's not about that, there are so many other options that we could go with. There could be this giant quest to unify the people. It could also be that the planet is unstable. It's being ripped apart by these portals and will ultimately be destroyed. It could also be that those portals are actually a magical confluence that will enhance the powers of those people who are living here for a long time. It could be the zealots want to harness the technology of the ancients and take the law into their own hands, says Inky Design. It could be a really interesting kind of space that we play in. I mean, how to get away. There is a legend. The portals open when people of the world are united, says Sheena Tiger. Yes, the portals open when they're united. There's an ancient technology. I think the idea that Inky Design has had is actually a pretty good one. In terms of, if there is this mystical chamber, this construct that the players could find, they might not know what it does. Now, I really like that as a concept, as a GM, because you don't have to figure out what it does at the beginning. If you don't want to, you can become flexible, which for me is all about GMing. And what I'm going to be talking about on my channel now moving forward is flexibility. So let's say there is this ancient civilization that existed here before, and that they disappeared. They were the original gate builders. So cliched, right? I mean, we talk about the original gate builders when we talk about Stargate. Stargate's another wonderful series. Stargate SG-1, episodic, up until they decided to bring in the giant Goa'uld storyline, and then they got rid of those, and then they needed another big storyline, as opposed to Stargate Atlantis, which had a giant storyline from episode 1. So the idea is that these portals were built by some ancient race. I almost feel like the ancient race should still be here. Let's turn that whole trope on its head. What if this region that they're in, we could very easily say, and this is going to look terrible, by the way, but that's just because it's a sketching idea. We could very easily say that there is a barrier that just runs here. It completely cuts off the world from that side. Now, the players don't have to know about that barrier. Not when we start the adventure. All that happens is that the players learn of this ancient technology. Maybe it's in the mountain range. After about 20 or 30 sessions, they get to the mountain, they get to the tower, they get the technology, and all of the technology is an old crashed flying machine. Maybe they repair that flying machine. Maybe they journey into the deserts because we've planted some seeds that there's adventures out in the deserts. And they come across this barrier that they cannot get across. What's on the other side? That is where the actual ancients are living. And we could even develop it further and say, well, as a matter of fact, the ancients are the ones who built the portals because they wanted to see what alien species would do when they were dropped on their planet. Or they're equally prisoners. I mean, we can go completely ballistic, but we don't have to develop that all now. We can just have these bigger ideas. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I see there's some nice ideas coming through from Lance. Perhaps the portals are tied to the afterlife and rebirth. Look at that. Look at that. There's a completely new idea in terms of that. When a character dies, a new character comes through the portal. Maybe. Or you die and then you are returned through the portal to your home world. So you actually have to die in order to get back. There are so many different ways that we can take this. Gene Learns English says, I'm having Might and Magic flashbacks. I played Might and Magic a couple times, but it always escalated too quickly for me to actually play it properly. Watsy has a PHB +1 concept when it comes to balancing player options. Essentially, their aim is to ensure balance. Okay, that's something else to do, not to do with me. All right. So now the idea, I think, is that there is a bigger mystery afoot. It's not an unusual idea for a survival game when it comes to designing a campaign. There's something more going on here. Well, we know there's something more going on here. There's something more going on here. Oh, okay. In other words, what I'm proposing we do is let's go to World Anvil. And in World Anvil, I am going to just quickly create a new document, a generic article. And in that generic article, I'm going to write the sentence, okay? And in the sentence, I am going to say, okay, so it's someone wants something, come on, badly by a specific time and is having difficulty getting it using a certain method because of an opposing force. I think that's the sentence basically. So in this case, I wonder if the difficulty getting it is, do we want to focus this on the player characters or do we want to focus this on the world? If it's the player characters, then we have to answer the question of, do we want them to get back or not? Is that the goal? Is that the primary goal or not? I kind of feel like that shouldn't necessarily be the goal. It just feels like it's very obvious. So the way that we would be doing this, right, is the players are going to expect, right, the barriers, the portals. So let's just do this. Expectation. The players will expect to escape through the portals. So in Adventure 3, we destroy the portals. Right. So this is where I love using expectation. It's my expectation. As the player, I'd be going, oh, we came through the portals. Right. We're going to survive on this, but we are going to go out. We are going to escape from here. That would be my expectation. So Adventure 1 is, I think, obligatory, right? So Adventure 1 is survival, right? That would be where the players are learning to fight on their own. They're learning about the world. They're learning that life is difficult and that life sucks. So survival. So that's the rules of the world, how to build stuff, dangers, etc. Right? We're going to focus a little bit on that as well. We don't have much time left, but there you are. So Adventure 2, they've now learned how to survive. They've learned to gather their resources. They're building up their little place. Or they're exploring, or they're doing both. That's absolutely fine. Adventure 2, I would introduce a threat. Okay? An immediate. Spell it however you like. English! Come on. All right. Introduce an immediate threat. So an immediate threat is something that is going to put this little world at risk. Remember, they've now learned how to survive. Adventure 1, they learn how to survive. You throw in a T-Rex, you throw in a chase through the river, you throw in slugs or leeches that are 3 feet long and that drop down from the trees. You just go mad. Okay, and on this point, Epian Gamer asks, how long is an adventure usually? I, generally speaking, will have an adventure that lasts for 4 sessions, if each session is about 2 to 3 hours long. I aim for 3 or 4 sort of sessions. So, yes, that's something to look at. Roman Wolf 007 says, almost like the 100. Cast down to earth and got to figure things out early on. The 100 is a classic example. Absolutely classic example. Here, you've all just arrived, kids. You're stuck on your own. So the first thing they go through is politics of the camp and the factionalization that happens as one group wants to do this and another group wants to do that. Once they start to come together, or rip themselves apart, they then go out and explore, and oh my god, there's weird eel things in the river, and there's strange, super strong warriors that throw spears at them. So then they go, oh my goodness, we can't go that way, so we'll go this way. And then they come across the other survivors who were here beforehand or who didn't leave, and you go, mind blown. So it's a constant evolution of the threat. The threat is always getting bigger from the immediate one. That's just good storytelling. So we should drive and pull on that, right? So introduced to the immediate threat. And then Adventure 3 is destroy portals. Okay. That's all we need to do in Adventure 3. And then Adventure 4, okay. When you look at adventure design, when you look at your campaign design, we talk about emotional rocketry going up and down, up and down, up and down. The emotional rocket ride that we've had now is it's down. Oh, they're in a new world. They're going to have to survive on their own. They're starting to learn how to survive. Okay, cool. They've got a little base established. Great. Introduce the immediate threat. It's a dip down. Emotionally, the players are oh my God, now we've got giant 6-headed T-Rexes running around. Very sad, but we can defeat them. Okay, great. So now we start to rise up again. Yay, we've defeated the immediate threat. That nesting ground of the T-Rexes, we destroyed it, we vaporized it, whatever. Continue rising happiness. We've got our camp, we've got our security. Okay, how are we going to get out the portals? The portals are gone. Emotional crash. Okay, so immediately the players are like, well, now we don't know what's going on. We don't know what our campaign is. We don't know. We can't ever get home. Because the very next adventure is we introduce allies and hope. Hope. Hope is what we need to give our players. We introduce a tribe that will come in and say, we have witnessed what you have been doing. You have been doing great things. But you should know that there is a thing that's going to be migrating north and will destroy everything. You must come with us deeper into the mountains where it's safe. In the mountains, they see drawn on a cave wall this diagram of an ancient flying machine that seems to be able to move to different worlds without the use of the portals. That could be our way back home, says the players, if that's the hook we want to give them. But now, if you notice what I'm doing, This is all that I need to do, really. And then when I go to Adventure 1, Survival Rules of the World, yeah, we've done the survival. We've done the rules of the world. How to build, we've done that. Dangers, okay, cool. So we haven't done that. So I need to come back to that and say, okay, I need some monsters. I need some cool monsters, something scary, something terrifying, something absolutely awesome that my players are going to be truly, truly terrified of. So the best thing I can think of is worms. Worms are terrifying, especially if the players have built their little patch of ground. You know, they've built their first structure. They've gone here and they've gone, okay, cool. We build 5, 10, 15, 20 foot block of wood that takes us 3 days. We then expand it out, and that there we go. We have a platform of wood. We put the walls around it. It's been 6 days. We've got our little base starting to grow. You know, we can now expand out and build more. This is Dungeon Fog, by the way. You know, so they've started to build up their little territory, and then worms start to crawl through the wood and into their skin. Or Inky Design, rock mimics on the hillsides. It could be anything. It's entirely up to you to decide. So that's all we really need to now do is plot out some monsters, because at the end of Adventure 1, we will know what our players want to do. Our players might go, nah, this is not for me. We don't want to build a base. We want to climb into the mountains. We want to look for a way to get back. They become obsessed with how to get back. So then those monsters are simply going to be causing you causing them, I should say, to be delayed in getting to where they want to go. You have to give them somewhere to go. They have told you, no, we don't want to build a base. Yeah, you've got all of those rules and stuff, but it's going to take us too much time. We need to move on. We need to go somewhere else. They've told you that your campaign idea of them being sedentary ain't gonna work. Does that change Adventure 2, introduce an immediate threat? No, it doesn't. As they're making their way up towards the mountain to see better and to get a lay of the land, they're now going to be hunted by plant-based cannibals who eat other plants. So that would be vegetarian cannibals, which would be great. Or they're going to be attacked by something else. So again, we just need to have some kind of threat that we will come up with once we know what our players are interested in. They overcome that threat. They try to get to their point where they can see the whole land. Brilliant. They're on an emotional high. You can see all around you, the bays, the little valleys, the weird and wonderful barrier that's in place. You can see all of that. And then you look up as the portals explode. Okay. Now, there was a question, when do you destroy those portals? You destroy those portals at the most cinematic moment possible. Is it at the beginning of the session? Okay, you get to the top of the mountain, you look out, you see everything. Make a dexterity saving throw. Why? Because 12 portals have all just exploded and is now showering down bits of rock on everybody. Well, that's dramatic. Now what do we do? Okay. Maybe that's at the beginning of a session. Maybe it's at the end of a session. Maybe it's as they're building a glider to get up to that portal and then suddenly the portals explode. Play it as you see it. But again, the important thing is that's all you need to plan. Destroy the portals. They're going to be the players are going to fill in all of the rest of the stuff. So what do we need? What do we need by Adventure 3? Bearing in mind, if each session is taking even 3 sessions, if each adventure is taking 3 sessions to play through, that's 9 weeks that we have before we get to Adventure 4. The introduction of the Allies and Hope. Is it ancient technology? Is it a spell? Is it a location? Is it finding the owners of that barrier? That we can figure out based on what the players want, what they are telling us to achieve and to do. So next week, you get to vote on what we talk about next week. And it's going to be a very quick vote because we're actually out of time. But we could do some monsters. We could maybe develop the allies that they're going to encounter. But that's it, folks. That's all we really need before we just start playing. So you tell me, what do you want to talk about next week? Monsters, allies, or shall we just do an old-fashioned GM questions and you can just bring me questions and we just answer all those questions all the time? I did see someone spoke about, Eric brought up the story, PC backstories don't really matter, do they? Any pre-game goals are irrelevant. How do you sell that to the players at session 0? Who said pre-game goals were irrelevant? Oh, no, 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 no. Maybe we should talk about player backstories in this world of ours. Yes, you are right. We have completely taken the players away from the world that they thought they were going to be playing in. But you should have briefed your players beforehand, by the way, that they are going to be in a survival situation in a very different world from the world that they're starting in. They should know that, because otherwise they might actually have an absolutely terrifying experience. But the player who has, I had a bully in my backstory, you know what you're gonna do. Hollywood has told you this in every one of these movies, like The 100, like Voyager, like Stargate. That bully will have been thrown through a portal a month or a week or a year earlier, before the player character arrived. And that player character is going to find that bully across the battlefield from them and recognize them and go, aren't you so-and-so from the farm that I grew up on? How on earth did you get here? I remember you and I'm going to attack you and destroy you. So, or Lost, another good example, right? Absolutely, another good example. So, yes, that is the joy of what we're doing here. These adventures, as I've listed them here, we could interject in this quite easily. PC backstory. Okay? And something else. A player can't make it for the weekend. Okay? They can't make it for the adventure for this week. Do you carry on? Or do you have a flashback where you go into the past and you go to that player's backstory and say, you guys are now all back at being level 1. This is a flashback. Here, you're playing the role of so-and-so's friends. This is this character's backstory. What a golden opportunity. There's 3 months worth of role-playing right there, and we haven't even got past Adventure 4 yet. That's what I think we have to focus on as GMs, is we have to understand the pressure doesn't have to be on us to come up with these magnificently complicated stories before we start. We don't have to railroad our players to following our narrative. We have some ideas, and we'll trigger those ideas because they're going to cause interesting outcomes. But that's it. That's it. Okay. I see the votes are in, and it looks like monsters. It looks like monsters is the thing. So we're going to do some monsters next week. I will be using all of the software that I normally use. Let me just save this before I forget it. Okay, so that is saved. We're going to talk about monsters next week. Remind me, please. We're going to discover that. We're probably going to talk about some of the folk that are going to work with those monsters, or some of the allies as well. I mean, it's an hour long. We can talk about a lot of stuff. So, yes. Thank you all for joining me this evening. We got sidetracked awfully tonight, but hey, that's what happens on this show. Until next week, Wednesday, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming.